April 26, 2026, the day that rewrote history. April 26, 2026. Something happened today that will be talked about for generations. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, launched a thunderous, coordinated strike from the skies and seas of the Strait of Hormuz, simultaneously, without warning, against 5 U.S. destroyers and 10 patrol helicopters, right in the middle of the world's most critical oil corridor. This was not a skirmish. This was not a minor naval incident. This was the most direct, the most audacious, and the most devastating strike Iran has ever executed against American naval forces in living memory. The destroyers that were once called unsinkable are now engulfed in flames on the surface of the sea. American helicopters are falling one by one from the sky. The legendary Aegis combat system, the most advanced close-in defense technology America possesses, proved completely powerless against Iran's sudden and overwhelming assault. This is no longer a regional conflict. What happened today is the single greatest geopolitical shock the world has witnessed since the end of World War II. The American superpower, under Donald Trump's watch, has just been struck directly in the face, in front of the entire world, with nothing to show for its trillion-dollar defense budget. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the entire planet's oil supply flows every single day, is now firmly in Iranian hands. They said they would do it. The world didn't believe them. And today, they did it. Can you process what that means? The #1 military power on Earth, spending over $900 billion annually on defense, has just been dealt a humiliating blow by a nation that has been under suffocating sanctions for decades. A nation the West tried to economically strangle. A nation that wasn't supposed to be capable of this. Today, we are going to expose the full, unfiltered truth. What weapons did Iran use to pull off this seemingly impossible feat? How rattled is Washington right now? And how are China, Russia, and North Korea responding to what just happened? Stay with me, because what you are about to hear will fundamentally change how you see the global balance of power. What actually happened at 1437 local time, April 26, 2026, was not an ordinary Saturday. It was the day history was rewritten, with fire, with smoke, and with the unmistakable sound of American naval supremacy being challenged head-on. According to intelligence assessments and satellite imagery, at precisely 1437 local time, IRGC forces launched a massive, synchronized surprise attack. No warning, no declaration, no diplomatic signal, just immediate, lethal, calculated action. IRGC naval anti-ship missile units, operating in full coordination with hundreds of armed high-speed boats and waves of suicide drones, locked onto the formation of 5 U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers on routine patrol in the Strait. Within less than 40 minutes, at least 3 of the 5 vessels had been struck by multiple anti-ship missiles, igniting enormous fires and causing critical structural damage. The remaining 2 ships were overwhelmed by drone swarms so dense and so fast that their close-in weapon systems were completely saturated, unable to track, unable to intercept, unable to defend. Simultaneously, 10 U.S. patrol helicopters, MH-60R Seahawks and AH-1Z Vipers, were either shot down outright or forced into emergency landings. Some were taken down by shoulder-fired missiles launched from speedboats cutting through the water at extraordinary speed. Others were struck directly in their tail rotors by precision suicide drones. This represents the largest single-engagement helicopter loss for the United States military since the Iraq War. The Aegis system, long celebrated as the impenetrable steel shield of the U.S. Navy, failed. And the reason it failed tells you everything about how Iran approached this battle. The IRGC did not attack with conventional force. They attacked with perfect asymmetry, hundreds of small, extremely fast targets, low-flying cruise missiles skimming beneath radar detection thresholds, suicide drones approaching from multiple directions simultaneously, pre-positioned floating mines already in the water. Every layer of American defense was hit at once, from every angle, all at the same time. The radar systems were overwhelmed. There was simply no time to respond effectively. 1 U.S. destroyer alone was confirmed struck by at least 4 separate anti-ship missiles. The impact ignited the ammunition storage and propulsion systems. Sailors were jumping into the water. Satellite images captured columns of black smoke visible for kilometers in every direction. The Pentagon has not yet released official casualty figures, but according to sources with direct knowledge of the situation, the number of American servicemen killed or critically wounded in this single engagement is already in the dozens and climbing. The U.S. ship formation was forced to withdraw from the central zone of the strait, For the first time in decades, the American Navy has been pushed back from a strategic waterway without facing a peer military opponent. The IRGC moved in, and they are still there. This was not a reaction. This was not improvised. This was a meticulously planned operation, years in the making, executed with near-perfect coordination. Iran has just proven to the world that they are no longer operating out of fear of American military power, the weapons that made it possible. Let's talk plainly about how Iran actually did this, because the answer is more sophisticated and more alarming for Washington than most people realize. Iran did not win this engagement through numbers. They won it through smart asymmetry combined with decades of forced innovation under the harshest sanctions ever imposed on a modern nation. The primary strike came from Iran's newest generation of anti-ship missiles, the Khalij Fars, the Persian Gulf series, the Zafar. These are supersonic sea-skimming missiles traveling at Mach 3 and beyond, flying at less than 10 meters above the water's surface, essentially invisible to the Aegis radar until it is far too late to intercept them. A single hit is enough to penetrate the hull armor of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. Multiple hits cause catastrophic, potentially unrecoverable damage. These are not outdated weapons reverse-engineered from old technology. These are significantly upgraded systems drawing on Chinese C-802 and C-803 anti-ship missile architecture, combined with active radar seekers and advanced inertial guidance that Iran has now fully indigenized and mass-produces in hardened underground facilities along its coastline. The cost asymmetry here is staggering and deliberate. One Khalij Fars missile costs approximately $200,000 to produce. One American SM-3 or SM-6 interceptor costs between $4 million and $10 million each. Iran is fighting an economic war alongside a military one, and on that front, they are winning decisively. Then came the swarm. Hundreds of naval variants of the Shahed-136 suicide drone and the Ababil-3 were launched simultaneously, from the coastline, from speedboats, from multiple vectors at once. These drones fly low. They continuously vary their altitude. They carry 40 to 50 kilogram warheads, and when launched in sufficient numbers, they overwhelm the CIWS close-in weapon system completely. While CIWS frantically engaged one cluster of incoming drones, other drones slammed directly into radar arrays and command structures. 10 American helicopters were down in under 30 minutes. The shoulder-fired missile teams operating from high-speed boats added another lethal layer. Operators needed only to acquire the target from 4 to 5 kilometers out, press the trigger, and watch upgraded Tufan and Delavia missiles, based on Russian Kornet-N and Chinese HJ-12 technology, close the distance in seconds, striking helicopter tail rotors and ship superstructures with devastating precision. And before any of this began, the IRGC had already seeded the strait with smart floating mines and bottom mines, remotely activated through encrypted communication systems integrated with cameras and proximity sensors. The Strait of Hormuz had effectively been turned into a living minefield before the first missile was ever launched. The Chinese technological contribution to this moment cannot be understated. Beijing does not acknowledge it publicly, but Beidou's satellite navigation precision, advanced semiconductor components, and anti-jamming radar seeker designs have moved through covert transfer channels into Iranian weapons programs. Iran received the foundation. Iranian engineers then took it apart, understood it, improved it, and built something new from it. That is the story of Iranian self-reliance under siege. Cornered for decades, they did not collapse. They innovated. And on April 26th, that innovation was put on full display in the world's most watched waterway. Washington in chaos. When news broke that 5 destroyers had been struck and 10 helicopters were down, the White House fell into a state of confusion not seen in recent memory. President Trump, who has spent years projecting an image of maximum strength and total dominance, went completely silent for 4 hours. No post, no statement, no response of any kind. When he finally appeared on Truth Social, the message was short, furious, and notably vague. Iran has just made the biggest mistake of their lives. We will respond. 10 times. MAGA. And then, nothing. No Tomahawk strikes were launched, no additional carrier groups rushed toward the strait at emergency speed. What the Pentagon actually confirmed was that the affected ships were withdrawing to safe positions for damage assessment, which is a carefully worded way of saying the U.S. Fifth Fleet retreated from the Strait of Hormuz. The USS Abraham Lincoln, the very symbol of American naval power projection in the region, remains anchored well offshore. Not advancing, not engaging, sitting still while the IRGC patrols the waters it just seized. The reason, according to multiple sources, is that Trump's core fear right now is not military, it's economic and political. An all-out war with Iran would send oil to $200 a barrel or beyond. That destroys the American economy heading into the midterms, and a destroyed economy destroys Trump politically. Inside the Situation Room, the administration is reportedly fractured. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is reportedly pushing for a forceful retaliatory strike. Others in the national security apparatus are urging extreme caution. Trump, caught between the two, publicly attacked members of his own team on Truth Social, accusing unnamed officials of being too weak and embarrassing America. Meanwhile, MAGA itself is divided in ways that are visibly uncomfortable for the administration. One faction is screaming for immediate military retaliation. Another is asking the question that nobody in Trump's orbit wants to answer out loud. If maximum pressure was supposed to make Iran kneel, why did the IRGC just sink our ships? On Fox News, commentators who have spent years defending Trump's Iran policy are now openly questioning whether the strategy has failed. Some are turning on each other live on air. Washington's actual response has been to send additional destroyers to the region, for presence, not engagement, and to call an emergency UN Security Council session demanding international condemnation of Iran. China and Russia vetoed immediately. Europe stayed largely silent, preoccupied with what $150 oil does to their already strained economies. The picture is this: the world's most powerful military, with the largest defense budget in human history, was struck by a sanctioned nation and chose not to respond in kind. Whatever the strategic rationale behind that choice, the optics for American credibility around the world are severe. China, Russia, and North Korea react. While Washington descended into internal argument, the other side of the global chessboard moved with speed and purpose. China was first and loudest. Within 6 hours of the IRGC strike, Beijing's foreign ministry issued a formal statement condemning what it called American provocations in the Persian Gulf and affirming Iran's right to defend its sovereignty. But the words were only the beginning. The People's Liberation Army Navy deployed the Shandong Carrier Group, China's most capable naval formation, from the Indian Ocean toward the Strait of Hormuz. Accompanying it, Type 055 destroyers, the most powerful surface combatants in Asia, armed with YJ-18 and YJ-21 supersonic anti-ship missiles. The message to Washington required no translation. The cost of re-entering the strait just went up dramatically. China also significantly increased real-time intelligence sharing with the IRGC through the Beidou satellite network. Multiple sources confirm that Chinese military technical advisors were already present at Iranian underground facilities in the weeks prior to the strike, helping upgrade radar systems and integrated command infrastructure. The weapons that performed so effectively on April 26th bear the fingerprints of that collaboration. Russia moved with equal decisiveness. Putin spoke directly with Iranian leadership within hours of the engagement, pledging comprehensive support across military, economic, and diplomatic lines. Additional S-400 air defense systems, Krasuka electronic warfare platforms, and shipments of Onyx and Kaliber anti-ship missiles were immediately dispatched through the Iraq-Syria corridor. Russia's naval base at Tartus in Syria was placed on full combat alert, and Moscow announced plans for the largest joint naval exercise in the history of Russia-Iran-China cooperation, scheduled for May in the Gulf region, featuring Zircon hypersonic missile systems. North Korea moved fastest on the ground. Within 48 hours, Pyongyang dispatched a formal delegation of ballistic missile engineers and drone warfare specialists directly to Iran by air. Kim Jong-un personally authorized the transfer of Hwasong missile technology variants and the latest generation of North Korean suicide drone systems. Hundreds of North Korean technical personnel are now reported to be on the ground at IRGC facilities, assisting with assembly, calibration, and crew training. What you are watching form in real time is not a loose collection of anti-American grievances. It is a functioning strategic architecture. China provides the technology base and economic backing. Russia contributes battlefield experience, advanced weapon systems, and geopolitical cover. North Korea supplies relentless will and cost-effective strike capability. And Iran stands as the operational frontline, the nation that actually pulls the trigger in the world's most consequential waterway. Together, these four actors complement each other in ways that are genuinely difficult for Washington to counter through conventional means. The spirit that no defense budget can buy. There is something that happened on April 26th that goes beyond weapons specifications and satellite imagery, something that balance sheets and defense procurement charts cannot capture. When IRGC operators drove their speedboats directly into the formation of American destroyers, they knew exactly what they were sailing into. They knew the Aegis radar was tracking them. They knew Sea-Wiz could tear their hulls apart in seconds. They charged anyway, without hesitation, without wavering. That is not tactics. That is something deeper. That is the spirit of a nation that has been sanctioned, besieged, had its scientists assassinated, been threatened with annihilation for 4 decades, and has never once accepted the role of victim. Iran does not fight for oil revenue projections or quarterly economic targets. They fight for national dignity, for the ideals of the revolution, for the belief, held across generations, that they are the defenders of the region against external domination. That conviction produces a kind of soldier that no amount of money can manufacture and no weapon system can fully account for. Compare that to the nature of American military force today, an institution that fights on contracts, on salaries, on rotation schedules, not on existential belief. When a destroyer takes 4 missile hits and the crew begins abandoning ship, that is not cowardice. It is the rational response of men who signed up for a job, not a holy cause. That difference in foundational motivation is real. It shows up on battlefields. It showed up in the Strait of Hormuz on April 26th. Iran has millions of young people who would volunteer tomorrow if called. No recruitment advertising required, no signing bonus. Just the call, and they come. That internal reserve of committed human will is a strategic asset that does not appear on any Pentagon spreadsheet, but it decides battles. What Hormuz looks like now. The Strait of Hormuz today is unrecognizable from what it was 72 hours ago. The IRGC has established a comprehensive, multi-layered defensive perimeter, shore-based missile batteries covering every approach, around-the-clock drone surveillance blanketing the entire corridor, smart mines distributed throughout the navigable channel, armed fast attack craft on continuous patrol, underwater acoustic monitoring systems tracking every vessel that enters the area. Any U.S. or Israeli warship wishing to transit must now factor in the very real possibility of engagement. The free passage that American naval dominance made automatic for decades is no longer automatic. It is contested, deeply, seriously, structurally contested. 20% of the world's daily oil supply is flowing east, toward China, toward Asia, rather than west toward Europe and American-aligned markets. Oil prices have surged 18% in a single trading day. Global supply chain managers are scrambling. European governments that spent years supporting American sanctions policy are now quietly exploring what accommodation with Tehran might look like. American hegemony in the Persian Gulf, the defining pillar of U.S. strategic dominance since the 1980s, has been openly challenged and forced to retreat for the first time in 40 years. That is not spin, that is what happened. Trump can post on Truth Social, MAGA can demand escalation, but the ships are not back in the strait. The IRGC flag is still flying over waters that American naval power was supposed to control absolutely, and the world is drawing its own conclusions about what that means. The unipolar moment, the era in which American military supremacy was so overwhelming that no regional power dared to directly confront it, did not end gradually. It ended on a Saturday afternoon at 14:37 local time in the Strait of Hormuz. We are witnessing the emergence of a genuinely multipolar world, not as a theory discussed in academic papers, as a lived reality happening in real time, reshaping the strategic landscape of the 21st century. Iran did not just win a battle, they changed the conversation about what is possible. They proved that will, ingenuity, and the right strategic partnerships can challenge even the most lavishly funded military machine on Earth. The Strait of Hormuz belongs to Iran. The future of the Middle East is being written by the axis of resistance, and American hegemony, for the first time in generations, is visibly, undeniably in retreat. History was made on April 26th, and we are only at the beginning of understanding what it means. What do you think Trump does next? Does he escalate or find a way to retreat without losing face entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you believe Iran has permanently changed the equation, comment Iran wins. If you think America still has a decisive response coming, comment America will strike back. Like this video, if this analysis gave you something the mainstream coverage didn't, share it, subscribe, turn on notifications, because the next chapter of this story is coming fast. The truth, unfiltered. See you in the next one.